The Raiders appear to be as close to the finish line as possible in their pursuit of their next head football coach without actually being at the finish line. That plus more comes up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 2nd, 2026.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. We're very proud of that. We're very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and because of the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good by way of the YouTube page, even when we're on the road. Ari makes sure that he holds it down, and as you could tell, if you are watching on the YouTube page, that we are on the road. We're in San Francisco. We're at the Moscone Center. It's the Calm Before the Storm Radio Row. Tell you a lot more about that, but we do want to shout out Ari for always being flexible and making sure that he's able to deliver a fantastic job like he does each and every day. So he's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And, of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. And as you can imagine, a lot of feedback based off what went down over the weekend. Saturday, the Raiders had another meeting, another interview with Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak. And, of course, there was a lot of anticipation what was going to happen with that, and then a lot of good positivity for the Raiders on Sunday. So a lot of feedback to get to. We'll get to as many calls and texts as we close out the show. We'll do that in segment number 3. Segment number 2, as I mentioned at the top, about as close to the finish line as possible when it comes to who the Raiders' next head football coach is going to be. So what should we be on the look for? What could possibly Klint Kubiak, if in fact he does seal the deal, sign the contract with the Raiders after the Super Bowl is over, what can we expect and what should we be looking for? We'll talk about that and coming up in segment number 2. Segment number 1, just news and notes of the day. And you guessed it, it's all about Klint Kubiak and, of course, being here at the Moscone Center for Radio Row, Media Row is what they're actually calling it in preparation for Super Bowl 60. We'll go ahead and jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So there was at one point 10 head coaching vacancies. Now there appears to be none. And again, the Raiders cannot seal the deal and get the contract signed with Klint Kubiak until after the Super Bowl is over and wrapped up. So February 9th is when we could start to look for that. But based off what happened over the weekend, the Arizona Cardinals, as a matter of fact, they hired Mike LaFleur, who was one of the guys that the Raiders had talked to. That was the offensive coordinator for the Rams. They hired him on Sunday officially. Afterwards, started to roll out on Sunday that the Raiders' interview with Kubiak went really well and that the Raiders are in position to get their next quarterback, or head coach, I should say. As a matter of fact, Adam Schefter put out sources. After meeting Saturday with Las Vegas and Arizona, Seahawks offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak intends to try to work out a deal to become the next head coach of the Raiders. No deal can be finalized until after the Super Bowl, but Klint Kubiak wants to coach the Raiders, and they want him to be their head coach. Now it's only a matter of time before the two sides can formalize a deal. So, again, we know that it can't be set in stone. It cannot be finalized right now. It cannot be finalized until after the Super Bowl is over, but it's about as close to official as it could possibly be. Now, we know that there's, scenarios that have popped up in the past with, coaches like Josh McDaniels, coaches with Ben Johnson, who was on his way to Washington. Then he got, turned around and decided to go back to Detroit. Anything can happen. We remember Cliff Kingsbury not too long ago, a couple seasons ago, when he was supposed to be the offensive coordinator for Antonio Pierce, and then he decided not to. So anything can happen in between now and then. We've documented that really well. But as long as Klint Kubiak wants to be a head football coach, he's going to be the head football coach of the Silver and Black. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN tweeted out, the Raiders front office has begun notifying the rest of the field that they've been eliminated as the team has made its decision on head coach. Carolina defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero was considered the number 2 in the equation behind Kubiak. Team was pretty zeroed in on a going offensive. So, again, it makes all the sense in the world knowing what the Raiders are in position of, knowing that they have a chance to bring in Fernando Mendoza as the number 1 overall pick. Why not get a young offensive-minded guy that can grow with that quarterback and give this team an opportunity? But it's funny, man. It's the week of Super Bowl, 60. We're here in the Bay. The Raiders so many times, aren't really talked about that much this week, and I guarantee that they're going to be a subject of a lot of conversations. I guarantee I'll have a bunch of interview requests that I'll be doing that people want to talk about the Silver and Black. People want to talk about the Raiders, want to talk about the direction that they're going. Matter of fact, Sunday night, as soon as the news broke out, I had a couple requests already that night. Hey, Q, can you jump on for a few minutes, to talk to John Lunn on Westwood One Sports, or can you talk to this guy, to talk about the Raiders and Klint Kubiak? Like, there's a big buzz around the Raiders, which is awesome based off Clint Kubiak. And, I mean, look what he's doing with that offense there in Seattle and just the way that he's aligned up players and put them in position like Jackson Smith and Jigba, a guy that you know is always going to be double-teamed and triple-teamed, just like Brock Bowers would be, but yet he schemes them up, puts them in position, so when he is out there, in formation and trying to go and make plays, he's able to get open and not have that kind of coverage and be basically hampered like, most big-time receivers. Like we see Brock Bowers all the time, right? We see Brock Bowers all the time get doubled and triple-teamed, and they're not going to allow this guy to break them and beat them. And Clint Kubiak is really good with scheme. Obviously, he comes from a very long lineage of NFL coaching experience when it comes to the Kubiaks. Gary Kubiak, obviously, is his famous father, multiple-time Super Bowl champ. So, I mean, I don't have to go in on that. But it's an exciting time. It's a nice buzz. It's great to have a good buzz around this team where there hasn't been. Most of the time it's doom and gloom, and, people all walk around here at the Moscone Center or wherever we are on the road at Media Row, and they're like, man, what are you going to do with those Raiders, man? What are the Raiders going to do? What's going on with them? And it's always a lot of negativity, but now there's a nice little buzz. And as I mentioned, this is the calm before the storm, before this, really gets ramped up here. But there's already a nice little buzz. And, everyone I run into, hey, man, that's going to be a good hire, man. Kubiak, that's a good hire. And you got the number 1 overall pick and got some salary cap space. And, again, nobody thinking that this team is going to go and all of a sudden go from being a 3-win team to being a 13-win team. But there's some positivity, there's some hope, and I think that that's the most important thing, some hope with Clint Kubiak and what he brings to the table if, in fact, they do go ahead and get that seal the deal. And, again, you could talk about it. We could say it's about as close to done as possible, but until it's actually official like a referee's whistle, you know that there is still a slight chance that it doesn't happen. But I do feel really good about that. If you're into these type of things, checking out on Twitter, AFL Godfather pretty much said if Clint Kubiak's not the coach of the Raiders in 2026, he's going to suspend his account till 2027. And I've been very adamant that AFL Godfather is inside the building with the Raiders. So, I mean, if anyone's going to know, it's him. But, again, like I said, unless something just were to come up that's unfortunate, unforeseen, that all of a sudden Kubiak gets cold feet, it's his job for the foreseeable future, and hopefully it's going to be a long future, and the Raiders can close this rotating door of potential head coaches. But we'll talk about what we know about Clint Kubiak. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2, and what to look for, probably more importantly, when it comes to Clint Kubiak. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 with today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is PrizePicks. The big game, it is almost here. That's why I'm sitting here in the Moscone Center getting ready for big game number 60. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. And this week, PrizePicks has a special max discount for the big game. Live in the app right now, Drake May just needs 1 passing yard for the max discount to win. Are you serious? 1 passing yard. That's guaranteed. Add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you can cash in just like that. PrizePicks is super simple to use. It takes no time to get started. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections. It makes watching the game even more fun because every drive and every single stat matters, even the 1 passing yard from Drake May. And you'll love how you can follow PrizePicks partners like us and tail or fade picks right from the feed. So what do you have to do? Well, download the PrizePicks apps today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. I also want to tell you about Drip Drop. Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? Honestly, hydration is the easiest win. And when I stay on top of it, my energy, my focus, my mood, they all level up. And let's be real, plain water, it just doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. And I hate that I left my bag and box of Drip Drop at the house. Drove all the way up from Vegas to San Francisco on Saturday and realized when I got here that I forgot Drip Drop because, man, that hydration, like I said, water, it's great. But that Drip Drop just adds a little, boom, extra kick to it. And I really do enjoy Drip Drop and all the different flavors that they have. It's not too sweet. It just adds a little something to your average water. So I got a ton of water. I'm going to have plenty of that all week long. But, man, I wish I had brought my Drip Drop with me. And unfortunately, I didn't. But that's all right. I got some so when I get home, I can enjoy it as well. But Drip Drop science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. It rehydrates you faster and more effectively than water alone. So right now, Drip Drop is offering all listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now, dripdrop.com, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to talk about Clint Kubiak. Time to talk about the Raiders and what we know. We do all expect him to be the guy come February 9th, put the pen to paper and make it official, right? And he's the next head coach of the Raiders, and hopefully he's a longtime head coach of the Silver and Black. But this is what we know as of right now. What is expected, right? Clint Kubiak, Raiders head coach, number 1 overall pick. We all expect that's going to be Fernando Mendoza, quarterback out of Indiana, Heisman Trophy winner, national champion. Offensive weapons, Ashton Jeanty, Brock Bowers, Big Mike, right? All these guys are involved. About $90 million in cap space based off now the fact that, the salary cap is actually higher than most people expected to be. It was all estimated off of $295 million, and in fact, it's going to fall in somewhere between $302 and $305 million, so even more than expected. Obviously, the Raiders could create more cap space if they need be by making some moves, releasing some guys, and keeping some cap space that way, but at least about $90 million in cap space, which is plenty. And then, of course, Tom Brady is part of the ownership group that went to meet with Clint Kubiak in Seattle. Tom Brady, Mark Davis, and others all made the trip and sealed the deal as far as they could. So there's a few things to like about this hire, and there's a few things to like about the situation that the Raiders are in. Because, again, this is going to be something, I've said it many times, that I don't believe this is turn it around in 1 year type thing. I mentioned in segment number 1, I don't think this is a 3 to 13 win team. I don't see it going that way. I see it being a slow build, but that's okay. That's how you build it the right way, especially with all the draft capital, 10 draft picks that they have. Obviously, the number 1 overall pick they'll use on the quarterback, but they have at least 10 draft picks right now. And the Raiders need a lot, right? There's nothing to, shy away from that. They need a lot. They need a lot of help. I mean, you can look at the offensive line, and one could argue that they need at least 3 offensive linemen. We can look at the wide receivers, and we can argue and say that they need probably 2 wide receivers, at least one number 1 wide receiver, a true number 1 wide receiver. We know Brock Bowers is the number 1 target, but that's at the tight end position, right? We know who Ashton Jeanty is. We can argue and say that probably needs another running back as well to, split carries. Obviously, Ashton would get the bulk of the carries, but Zamir White, he didn't get it done when he had an opportunity in 2025. Not that anyone really got it done in 2025 with the Raiders, but he's a free agent, so I don't expect him to be back. So you could argue that they, probably need one more running back as well. I would say that you need still need a bookend to Max Crosby on the other side of the defensive line, right? I mean, I like what Tonka Hemingway is doing in the middle. I like what J.J. Pegues is doing in a small amount of time and burn that he got, but I would say that they really need another defensive lineman. And really, I hate the fact that, and we're going to see it on Super Bowl Sunday, that K'Lavon Chason is out there killing it for the Patriots. Really hate that, because he was in the building with the Raiders and they chose to go with Malcolm Kuntz over Chason. I was actually hoping that they're going to bring both those guys back, and they only chose one, and apparently they chose the wrong one. And I don't think Malcolm Kuntz will be back in 2026. I just don't see it. I mean, they gave him, $12 million for 1 year, and he really didn't turn into too much. And I do realize coming off the ACL, you're better the second year, but that's a lot of money invested last season and not a whole lot of results for us. So I don't see this new staff turning things around and deciding that they're going to bring him back. I could see Eric Stokes returning as a free agent cornerback, but you have to decide what you're going to do with that position. One could argue that they need at least 3 linebackers. They had E-Rob, they had Jamal Adams, and they had Devin White. I don't see Devin White coming back. I don't see Jamal Adams coming back. Now we'll see what kind of scheme they run defensively, who the defensive coordinator is, but I just off the top of my head, I don't see that, and E-Rob probably won't come back either, right? So there's a good chance that they'll need 3 new linebackers. They have Tommy Eichenberg, and Cody Lindenberg. Those are the 2 young linebackers that they have currently on the squad. They can look at the safety position and decide they want to do some things there too. There's a lot of areas. I didn't mean to go through all that just to try to make it sound like doom and gloom, but there's a lot of build that needs to be done. That's basically what I'm saying. So it's not going to be just a one-off season turnaround. But what we do know that they could bring in, is everything that I mentioned, right? With all that salary cap space, with all the draft capital, and obviously with Clint Kubiak now as the head coach. Things that we don't know. Obviously the staff. He's going to have to put a staff together. And, one of the things we talked about is if you wait till the end of the season, when you wait till after the Super Bowl, right, it could be slim pickings. There's a few options that they have. Indiana's Chandler Whitmer, quarterback coach. He could be the quarterback coach for Fernando Mendoza again, right? Obviously, he's got plenty of familiarity. There's one direction he can go there. There's been rumors that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers want to hire him. But if he has an opportunity to coach up Fernando Mendoza, a guy that he just helped win the Heisman Trophy, there's a good chance that could happen there. Seattle has a handful of guys. You could pay attention to this on Super Bowl Sunday. They have a ton of guys on the offensive side of the ball that Clint Kubiak brought over from New Orleans with him, like offensive line coach John Benton, quarterback coach Andrew Janocko, offensive assistant Michael Byrne, run game coordinator Rick Dennison, and run game specialist Justin Outten. So all those guys came over with Clint Kubiak from New Orleans, and I'm not saying that that's going to be his coaching staff. I'm not saying that he's going to bring all those guys with him, because why does Seattle? Seattle doesn't have them to let those guys go. They don't. But I'm looking at a couple of those guys thinking, yeah, they'll probably a couple will definitely come with Clint Kubiak to the Raiders and be part of his coaching staff. I'm interested in Rashid Shaheed, the wide receiver, right? The Seahawks traded for him. He was a member of the Saints. He was there under Clint Kubiak's watch, right? And he was doing some good things there. He's a speedster. I mean, you want to talk about Raider football, right? Taking the top off the defense. I mean, that's who Rashid Shaheed is all day, every day. He's got so much speed. Last season between the two teams, the Saints and the Seahawks, 59 catches, 687 yards, and a couple touchdowns. But he had 3 punt return touchdowns and 1 kickoff touchdown so far in his career. He's only been in the league since 2022. He's had 3 punt return touchdowns and a kickoff touchdown in his regular season career. He's also had a touchdown, kickoff return touchdown in the postseason. And you know, anyone who's been listening to this show for a while knows what I've been talking about for the longest when it comes to the Raiders and what they don't have. They don't have a guy who's a threat in the kick return game. They don't have a guy who's a threat in the punt return game. They don't have a guy who other teams say, yeah, don't kick the ball to him. Guess who Rashid Shaheed is? He's that guy that they'll say, yeah, don't kick the ball to him. And Clint Kubiak knows how to use them. So I mentioned earlier about the weapons that they have. If you're looking at, Bowers, Genty, you're looking at Big Mike, right? And you think about, got Trey Tucker. If you add Rashid Shaheed and his speed to the mix, okay, now you got something, especially if you know how to use him. The Raiders have had dudes talented. They've had guys that are fast. They've had all kind of different talent on their team in the last, handful of years, but it just seems like they don't really use them correctly. And I'm not saying Shaheed is going to be a number 1 wide receiver. I don't think he's a number 1. But you have a number 2 like that, even a number 3 that has that kind of ability where you can hit him with the end arounds. You can hit him with the jet sweeps. You can do all kind of creative stuff with them because that speed is something special. And when you have a guy that knows how to use him is most importantly. And, oh, by the way, the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, whatever you want to call it, the fact he's a free agent. So he's going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason, and I definitely can see the Raiders saying, hey, that's a priority. I can see Clint Kubiak saying, go get my guy, right? Again, they need offensive weapons. He's still a young dude. He's only been in the league for a couple years, and he's got all kind of playmaking ability. I would definitely expect to see him in the silver and black in 2026. And to me, that's something to get excited about because, again, if I have an offensive play caller that knows how to use offensive weapons, that makes everyone else's job that much easier. If you have a guy like Shaheed who could take the top off of defense, and you have a guy like Brock Bowers who's Mr. Consistently Consistent, right, and then you have a guy like Big Mike, and, and nobody's been able to unlock him since he's been in the league. So I would love to see, Clint Kubiak do that. 12 personnel is something that he uses quite a bit. Right, and that's something. How many years have we heard about 12 personnel, even 13 personnel? Oh, this is the year the Raiders are going to do it. I don't think anything's off the table with Clint Kubiak. I know I got excited about Chip Kelly because I thought he was going to get creative offensively. Clearly, he didn't, especially with him and Pete Carroll not being on the same page. But this is Clint Kubiak's show, so he'll be on the same page. Right, it's his page, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's something to get really excited about is what he could bring to the table offensively. Again, they've got a lot of work to do. They got to find out who the defensive coordinator is going to be. They're not going to have Patrick Graham. He's the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive coordinator. That's been officially announced already. That was late last week on Friday they announced that. So that's done. So after all these, years with the Raiders, from Josh McDaniels to Antonio Pierce to Pete Carroll, now you got PG. He's in Pittsburgh now. He's going to be the Steelers defensive coordinator. So the Raiders obviously have to go in another direction. Can the Raiders hold on to Robbie Leonard? I mean, that's going to be a Clint Kubiak situation. He'll have to make that call. But the good thing about him, as opposed to some other candidates and guys that are just getting the job, like a LaFleur in Arizona, and I'm sure LaFleur has a pretty deep, a Rolodex as well. But Kubiak has a deep Rolodex just based off his name alone. The fact that there's so many years of Kubiak football in the National Football League. So I could see a world in where he's able to put together a really good staff. But that's obviously something to pay attention to. But I'm telling you, Rashid Shaheed is the one I'm looking for. I would not be surprised if he's one of the first priority guys that the Raiders sign in free agency. I know the offensive line is going to have to be attacked, and they will, right? They're going to need at least two. And like I said, we can argue and say that they need three on the offensive line, three starters. And I'd be fine if they went and got that. But I guarantee you Rashid Shaheed will be a priority when it comes to going after him in free agency just because of what he can do and what Clint Kubiak has already shown he can do with him offensively. Coming up in segment number 3, we'll hear from you, 707-654-4693. We're live here at the Moscone Center for Super Bowl 60. Getting ready for that, the Patriots and the Seahawks. So we'll hear from you coming up next as we close things out on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do got a couple more sponsors that I'd like to get to real quick, and the first one is Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there's got to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo. QUO, the smarter way to run your business communications. When your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text one shared business number. Nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and even more personal. And it works right from your phone or computer. You can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's Quo, QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. I also want to tell you about Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, that part hasn't been so simple. That's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It's putting the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You pull up the app, you pick an upcoming NBA games, and tickets will be locked in within minutes. And you'll see the all-in price up front, so no surprise fees when you go to check out. Being able to see the view from your seat before buying makes the decision easy. The zone deals, you choose a section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save, just like that. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. Everything feels quick and stress-free from start to finish. So right now, take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's Locked On for $20 off. LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Gametime.co, not .com. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to get to your calls and texts. Straight off that Locked On Raider podcast. Voicemail line 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, do want to thank you so much for making this the first listen of the day. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. The first text comes from our guy, the Godfather. Not the AFL Godfather, but the Godfather. So what's up, Q? The Godfather from Cali here, ready for the season to officially end once the Super Bowl gets played. I think Amy Trask said it best. The day after the Super Bowl, everyone's officially 0-0 with all the hope in the world that it'll be their year. I think for many in the nation, we're ready to just win. We don't care who it is. We just want to win. With that being said, I know we could all start buying our Mendoza jerseys. But what about free agency? How do the Raiders get to the same level the Patriots got to last year when they spent the most cap in free agency? Who are some legit free agents the Raiders can target? And who do you think would be an immediate playmaker to make this rebuild move along quicker? Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks to you and Ari for doing what you guys do. Best wishes, the Godfather. We'll get into free agency. We'll do a whole free agency show sooner rather than later. Really kind of want to make sure that the hiring first takes place. But the one big one is the one I talked about in segment number 2, Rashid Shaheed. That one I think is going to be a big-time priority. Obviously, the offensive line, it doesn't matter who the coach is going to be. Offensive line has to be taken care of. So you can start looking in that direction. Tyler Lindenbaum is my favorite guy, the center from the Baltimore Ravens. But he's also every team's favorite guy that needs a starting center on their offensive line because that dude, he's great. He's great at what he does, and obviously he's going to demand a lot of money. So that would be one guy that I pay attention to, and Shaheed as well. But, Linderbaum's going to be a lot harder to land only because so many different teams and organizations are going to be looking at him, and he's got they got a lot of money. Everyone's got a lot of money now based off the salary cap going up, and the Raiders have plenty of it as well. But they're going to need to get, like I said, 2 or 3 offensive linemen for sure. So, but like I said, we'll get into it. We'll go through the Raiders free agents that they have. I mentioned in segment 2, Eric Stokes. I think he's a guy that comes back. We'll get into that at some point. We'll definitely break that down. But, I think it's pretty safe to go get your Fernando Mendoza jersey for sure. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Izzy and Sack. He's calling to talk about the handshake agreement the Raiders and Clint Kubiak have made. Here he is, Izzy and Sack.
Yo, what up, Q? This is Izzy from Sack. Called the other day, and I was sick. Probably sounded mad congested and probably hard to understand, but just calling to talk about the potential handshake deal with Kubiak. Man, I'm super excited. When I called the other day, I was saying how it'd be pretty dope to have a head coach coming off of a Super Bowl win, of course, if they win, and a quarterback who just won a national championship. That's just culture that we haven't had as a Raider, or in the Raiders, and they're just going to bring winning culture. On top of that, being behind the ultimate winner of Tom Brady is just going to be crazy, man. I'm excited. I know it's just a handshake. I know Kingsbury had a handshake infamously a few years ago, but seeing the Cardinals just hired their coach, and I know Kubiak wants to be head coach, so all signs are pointing to it's a done deal. I can't wait, man, and I just want to say thank you for everything you and Ari do. Like I said last time I called, man, you feel like family. I listen to you so much, man. My kids know your voice. It's funny. But let's go Raiders, man. Have a good one, brother. Izzy from South.
Izzy, thanks so much for your call, and you're right, man. To be honest, I didn't think about it like that, to be honest about that. If Kubiak wins the Super Bowl, he's definitely a winner. Mendoza, we know he's a winner. The guy won the Heisman Trophy, won the national championship. It's a great way to start and get guys that are used to winning in the building, right? And that's the reason why when, Gruden and Mayock were in charge, there were so many times they'd go after Clemson guys and Alabama guys just because those guys are used to winning. It's something to be said about dudes that know how to win, right? I mean, there's some guys that are just really good football players or good athletes in general, but they've never won anything in their life. It's something to be said when you're a winner, when you're a guy that has one. So you bring up a great point. Like I said, I hadn't thought about it like that. Kubiak, if they do win the Super Bowl, he'll be going out as a champion and then taking over the Raiders job. And we already know Mendoza is a champion. So there you go. I like that, man. That was a good way of thinking. Thanks for the call. Definitely appreciate you. And glad you're feeling better than you were last time you hit us up. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Oakland AM 510. He said, pumped up for this hire, but will not be totally convinced it's done until they're pen to paper. I still remember when Josh McDaniels backed out of the Colts job, which is a reason I didn't respect the hire when he came to the Raiders. As for assistant coaches, look at OC Andrew Janocko or Justin Outen, DC from that McDonald Ravens Michigan tree, either Carl Scott, Chris Partridge, Anthony Weaver, Zach Orr, or Steve Klinkscale. And special teams coach Marwan Malouf. I know I said that wrong. Shout out to you and Ari from Oakland, AM 510. And, Anthony Weaver, I definitely believe, is going to be in the mix for Kubiak and being a defensive coordinator. Anthony Weaver is a really good coach. I would look forward to him. I would actually want a guy like him. I think that he could do a hell of a job. And now that we know Patrick Graham is gone, they obviously have to fill that void. Zach Orr, I wouldn't go in that direction only because he didn't do very well with Baltimore's defense. I mean, it's just bottom line. There's nothing you can say about that. They just didn't. I know he was still early in the, in his defensive coordinator role and his job that he had there in Baltimore, but it just wasn't that great. But some of those names are names that I mentioned in segment number 2. Again, I don't think the Raiders are going to get all those guys, but those are guys that Kubiak brought over to New Orleans from New Orleans to Seattle. So, thanks for that text. Definitely appreciate you. And you're right. Until it's all signed, sealed, and delivered, you can't be with 100% say that it's over and it's done because, well, as we know, it isn't quite done yet. One more call. Let's get this one from Barry in Baltimore. He's calling to talk about the excitement level he has and the way things are going to be lining up or seem to be lining up for the Raiders with the handshake agreement with Kubiak and Mendoza coming in. Here's Barry from Baltimore.
What up, Q? This is Barry from Baltimore. I just wanted to call in real quick. I saw the news today about, handshake deal, whatever you want to call it, between the Raiders and Kubiak. I'm pumped, man. This is exactly what I wanted. A young offensive-minded head coach to be able to lead this team in the future and, of course, now. I couldn't ask for any more. I mean, the way things are lining up, and don't get me wrong, I know I'm a fan, and I'm probably getting a little too excited, but it just seems like the Raiders are finally getting some good mojo, man. It's like they're getting the first pick. Obviously, I'm hoping it's Fernando Mendoza. It sounds like that's the case. You get your franchise quarterback. You're finally going to get the coaching hire right. Meaning, I don't know if it's going to be right, but, I mean, it's just what I'm going to hope for. And it seems like everything's lining up for what they're looking for someone you could build with. I don't know. It just feels different. It feels like Raider Nation's finally going to get maybe some good luck or whatever you want to call it, mojo. Things are just lining up, man. And I'm going to give this coach time. There's going to be some downs, of course. There's going to be some learning curves. But I'm willing to do that. I was impatient last year because I just knew Pete Carroll wasn't the long-term answer, no matter how you dice it up. No matter how good he did, eventually he would move on just from age alone. Comes in Klint Kubiak, 38-year-old coach, young, offensive-minded, so we can keep that system going and going. If they lose an offensive coach here and there, that's fine, because you still have that system, and they can build on that. So I'm excited, man. I just, I hope this whole week goes by. No backing out. I don't think so, but you just never know. Crazy things happen, but I'm excited, man. I don't know, unfortunately, the Raiders lost Carol Davis this year, and, I don't know, maybe her, going up and hanging out with Al and all the other former Raiders, maybe they're like, you know what, enough's enough. Let's get some positive, mojo to this team finally. It's just been desperate need of some wins. So I can't be more excited. This is who I wanted from the get-go. We missed out on Ben Johnson last year, who I really wanted. It just makes too much sense. So just calling in with my thoughts, man. I'm back in. I was kind of taking a back seat. I was going to tell myself this year because of what happened last year with getting excited, but forget that. I'm in. I'm ready for this off season. So as always, appreciate what you do for bringing that daily content. It's my first listen every morning. I'm out. Go Raiders.
Barry, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And it is exciting, man. It's exciting to know that you have what feels like momentum on your side with some positive things coming because, again, a lot of times when I'm here where I'm at right now, Radio Row, there's a lot of conversation about, oh, man, what are the Raiders going to do? Oh, man, they stunk it up this year. Oh, man, how are they going to get out of this hole? But now there's some juice. There's some excitement for every reason that you mentioned. And, again, nothing is done until it's done. Can't get too far ahead of yourself. Can't put the cart before the horse, right? I mean, last year I was trying to keep everything chill, and I said the Raiders are going to double their wins, and they didn't even reach the wins that they had in 2024, right? They had one win less. So, got to kind of take it very slow, day by day, see how this thing grows, and make sure that everything gets done, like the pen get to put the paper when it comes to Clint Kubiak. But, again, it does feel like things are trending in the right direction. But until it's all signed, sealed, and delivered, and you start to see everything built up and put together, it's just it's a good feel right now, and it's not 100% real yet. Now, obviously, when he's there, and then they start putting the staff together, and then they get ready for a free agency, and then they get ready for the draft, then you can start to see the pieces put together, and that's when you start feeling a lot better about the about what's going on and the direction that this team is going. But Barry, thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show. Again, the calm before the storm here at the Moscone Center in San Francisco all week long, all week strong. We'll be here preparing for Super Bowl 60 and, of course, bringing you everything that I got that can be Raiders-related. That's, really good stuff. We'll bring it to the table as we always do. We do have the Raiders Squad Show coming up later on this morning, 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. with Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself. So you'll see me again in a few minutes, depending on what time you're listening to this right here from this spot. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.